Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well and staying safe during this time. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. Like I said, thank you so much for checking me out. If you haven't done so, please make sure to hit that subscribe button just right below the video. Cool, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And if you're returning, welcome back. Thanks again for your support. I truly do appreciate having you here.
Stablecoin hearing with Undersecretary Liang yesterday. That's also here on the channel page. Feel free to check that out. But she is going to be testifying next week at the Senate Banking Committee. So expect some hard-hitting questions there. Remember, the Senate Banking Committee headed by Sherrod Brown. And then, of course, you have Pat Toomey as the ranking member. You have Elizabeth Warren. You have Cynthia Lummis. You have quite a few people there that will ask some in-depth questions on it. So if you want me to stream this hearing next week, again, next Tuesday at the same time as these previous ones, 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern, let me know in the comments below. I'm happy to do it, but let me know if it's something you're interested in. Thank you to everyone who participated. I really did enjoy and appreciate the discussion that we had back and forth in the chat as we were listening in. Now, for the big news of the day, courtesy of James K. Filan, Ripple has filed its surreply regarding the SEC's motion to strike the fair notice defense. This is important because with this, Ripple is countering the SEC's motion to strike the fair notice defense from being able to be used here in the case. We've already gotten a few reactions here, but I want to go through the document in full. It's not too long. It appears lengthy when you first click on it, but most of that is an exhibit. Jeremy Hogan already tweeted out a response here saying the SEC argued that prior lawsuits against crypto companies crypto, sorry, I'm tongue twisted today. It's that early hearing. The SEC argued that prior lawsuits against crypto companies provided fair notice to Ripple. However, half of the lawsuits did not involve the sale of digital assets at all, and the other half involved companies that held ICOs, and the first lawsuit was in 2017. So, after they had already been established, right? XRP had already been sold, many times between investors in other platforms, not just coming from Ripple, the company, right? So it had been traded actively for years before that first lawsuit even hit. So here we go, into the surreply. Now, just to take a quick look at here, there's 26 pages in this document. Subtract out that first page, which is just the cover sheet, and when you move on down here, you'll see it quickly moves into the signature here. Michael Kellogg, who is the lawyer for Ripple, the company, and then you can see everything here is the Exhibit A. Exhibit A is this cornerstone report on SEC crypto enforcement actions, and you can see that full listing with the SEC case here near the bottom, item 73 in their listing. Now let's go through the document here just to get everyone up to speed. We'll go through the intro and all the commentary just like normal. I do like to go through these in detail because then we can glean some things together that might get overlooked. And please do comment your thoughts below and anything that you pick up on that maybe I miss as we're going through the discussion here. So in the introduction, in its reply supporting its motion to strike Ripple's fourth affirmative defense, the SEC asserts for the first time that Ripple's fair notice defense fails because prior to suing Ripple, the SEC had already brought more than 70 cases that subjected other digital assets to the application of the federal securities laws. In support of this argument, the SEC cites a May 2021 report by a private consulting firm, Cornerstone Research distributed after Ripple had filed its opposition brief, the Cornerstone Report. The SEC also requests that this court take judicial notice of the SEC complaints and other charging documents listed in Appendix 1 of the report, which the report characterizes as cryptocurrency enforcement actions. Ripple respectfully submits this surreply to oppose the SEC's inappropriate request for judicial notice and to address the SEC's misleading characterization of its prior enforcement actions. Courts have broad discretion to consider arguments in a surreply, particularly when new arguments are put forth in a reply brief. And this surreply is justified, they argue here. The SEC asks this court to take judicial notice of a private firm's analysis in an effort to, quote, smuggle in more than 70 cases, the vast majority of which the SEC have never cited in its opening brief. All of that is in support of an inappropriately premature request for this court to conclude as a factual matter that market participants had fair notice that XRP would be considered a security. So pause. Remember here a couple things. So first, the SEC is trying to, according to Ripple here, smuggle in these additional cases via this private firm analysis. And doing this, they are trying to prematurely get rid of the fair notice defense. We've seen individuals like Jeremy Hogan talk about the stage that we're in this case. They're trying to get the fair notice defense removed before it's even argued. So it's a totally different stage. The SEC doesn't want this fair notice defense to be able to be utilized as they go through the trial process, if it makes it that far. So do keep that in mind. Now, coming back into the document here, even if the court were to consider this improper factual proffer, and it should not, the enforcement actions cited in the report do not actually support the SEC's argument in the first place. As Ripple noted in its opposition brief, the SEC had never before this case asserted that a single sale of digital assets outside the context of an ICO constituted an offer or sale of securities. The more than 70 cases that the SEC now attempts to rely on support Ripple's point, not the SEC's. Not one of those cases alleged a violation of Section 5's registration requirements for the sale of digital assets outside the context of an ICO. The court should deny the SEC's request for judicial notice and disregard the SEC's attempt to rely on disputed facts to foreclose a legally cognizable defense. So again, there's the intro. SEC trying to keep the defense from even being argued. Now Ripple is saying, disregard this report, and even if you did pay attention to this report, it doesn't support the SEC, it supports us because of the ICO fact, right? These were all in the context of ICOs, not in the context of what we were doing. Now here they're going to argue their points. The SEC's reply brief continues to ignore the legal standards applicable to motions to strike. The SEC cites legal questions as to which there are disputed or substantial issues and facts outside the four corners of Ripple's answer in an effort to obtain a premature merits ruling on Ripple's affirmative defense. In support of that effort, the SEC asked the court to take judicial notice of the Cornerstone Report as a purportedly undisputed fact undermining Ripple's position. The SEC is triply wrong. The court may not properly take judicial notice of the Cornerstone Report. The facts it contains are not undisputed, and if the court were to consider the cases cited in the report, they support Ripple, not the SEC. So there's their arguments. The SEC is wrong in 3 ways. Let's get the details of what they're going to argue. Under Federal Rule of Evidence 201, a court may take judicial notice of a fact that is not subject to reasonable dispute because it can be accurately and readily determined from sources whose accuracy cannot reasonably be questioned. Because the effect of judicial notice is to deprive a party of the opportunity to use rebuttal evidence, cross-examination, and argument to attack contrary evidence, caution must be used in determining that a fact is beyond controversy under Rule 201B. And while a court may take judicial notice of a public record or document filed in another court, it cannot do so for the truth of the matters asserted in the other litigation. And there's the case cited. While the SEC claims that it does not ask the court to consider the content, analysis, or conclusions from the Cornerstone Research Report to decide the motion to strike, it does ask this court to adopt the report's characterization of the complaints and charging documents collected in Appendix 1 as relevant to this action. That request fails at the outset because the Cornerstone Report is not a public record, and the SEC has made no attempt to establish that it is. Nor has the SEC made any attempt to establish that the report's accuracy cannot reasonably be questioned. And then they give some examples here. Now that's a good point. As we just pause a sec, the SEC has not proven without a shadow of a doubt here, right, that this report is not able to be questioned, right? It's a private research firm that did this. It's not a public record. It's what they did. We cannot say that their report is 100% factual, right? It's a private firm. And you can't say that, hey, this document is beyond refute. And so that's what the Ripple team's arguing here. They say, continuing here, other courts in this district have rejected requests for judicial notice under similar circumstances. In Doyle versus the Department of Homeland Security, the SEC denied judicial notice of a settlement where the parties' submissions made clear that they vehemently disagreed as to which facts the court should glean from the settlement agreement, and the court could not find that the factual purpose for which plaintiffs urged the court to consider the settlement would be beyond reasonable dispute. The same is true here. The SEC argues, based on the Cornerstone Report, that by the time the SEC sued Ripple, both Ripple and the public were on notice that the SEC had already filed a large number of actions involving digital assets. That argument is not just disputed, it is highly misleading. So again, key in here. This is the portion that was highlighted by Jeremy Hogan in his tweet, and it's definitely worth paying attention to here. The 75 enforcement actions related to digital assets that Appendix 1 and by extension the SEC references as having been filed before this case do not tell the story the SEC now claims. The SEC asserts that 52 of the actions alleged an unregistered securities offering, in violation of Section 5, but ignores the nature of those actions. The nature of those actions was substantially different from what the SEC alleges here in particular. Now, these bullets are important. 37 of the 75 cases cited in the Cornerstone report, approximately 50%, did not involve the sale of any digital assets at all. Many of those cases involved the sale of unregistered shares in companies that in turn had some connection to the crypto industry. Ripple obviously could not have taken notice that the SEC would view sales of XRP as a securities offering from cases involving the sale of unregistered stock, a traditional violation of Section 5. Again, those were unregistered offerings of stock in those companies. That's what the allegations were, that these crypto adjacent businesses were selling pieces of their company as part of an offering that was not registered with the SEC. Very different from XRP and Ripple, right? XRP is an asset, a digital asset, and Ripple is a company. So, very key distinction. Other than its case against Ripple, all 37 of the remaining cases the SEC has brought involving digital assets were in the context of an ICO. The SEC does not allege that Ripple engaged in any ICO. Ripple demonstrated in its opposition brief that there was not fair notice that the Securities Act's registration requirements would apply to the sales of digital assets outside the ICO context. The SEC's reply brief does not even attempt to address that argument, and the Cornerstone report that the SEC wishes to rely on affirmatively supports it. While the SEC has warned the market about ICOs, it gave express guidance to the market that the two other well-established cryptos, Bitcoin and Ether, were not securities. If you listened in on the hearing today, you would have heard that same thing, that Bitcoin and Ether were not securities. Rastin Benham specifically said that Bitcoin is a commodity, and later on in the hearing, you heard one of the other people testifying as far as the way the SEC is viewing Ether. We're well versed in that. We won't touch on that here. Let's get back into the document. Exhibit A to this reply memorandum lists each of the 75 cases listed in the Cornerstone report and the relevant circumstances of those cases, which we looked at a few moments ago. As Exhibit A shows, this is the very first case in which the SEC has ever brought an enforcement action against a company or its individual executives for selling or distributing an established digital asset, alleging that Section 5 of the Securities Act required registration of such sales. Note, this is in bold, this is in italics, this is important. The first time the SEC is trying to have an enforcement action against an established asset, sales of an established digital asset, not an ICO. So very, very important distinction. They make sure to highlight that accordingly. Accordingly, although the court should not consider the Cornerstone report in the first place, if it were to consider that report would only offer further support of Ripple's arguments. As the Cornerstone report shows, the SEC's established pattern of asserting Section 5 violations only in the context of ICOs and not in the context of already established digital assets would have given comfort to a reasonable person that XRP was not a security and that its sales did not require registration. Conclusion here, The court should disregard the Cornerstone report and should reject the SEC's request to take judicial notice of it. If the court does consider the report, it provides additional support for Ripple's opposition to the SEC's motion.
I'm your guy. I will keep you posted. I'm your advocate. I'll be back on a daily basis, usually multiple times per day, with these videos to keep you updated with everything going on. So, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you haven't done so, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Feel free to share any of my videos with your friends, family, social media, or anybody who may care to listen. Thanks so much for your continued support. I'm always here for you. I want to help you through this time. So thank you so much for continuing to choose me. Enjoy your day, stay safe, and I'll catch you again probably in a couple hours. Thanks, everybody. See you later.